Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag and drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. Well, this is certainly the most operatic of trailers, of the set of trailers that we've seen for Die Hard. Would you agree?
I guess I could see that. Big spectacle.
Big spectacle. They've got the music with the chorus. They've got where we oh la la la. They've got Ode to Joy in there. It is a very dramatic spectacle of a trailer, and par for the course, they give away everything. Everything, Andy.
Yeah, there's not a moment of action that isn't hinted at.
Hinted at?
Well, some are hinted and some are flat out, exposed.
It was an exciting trailer, and I think they actually did. They accomplished something that they clearly were trying to do, which is to play off the fact that John McClane is now, after 10 years, such an iconic action character that they don't need to tell you who he is up front. And the first thing we get of McClane is just him saying, "I'll take it from here." And we don't even know it's a McClane until late in the trailer.
Yeah, it was interesting because it really sets up the story. The first 30 seconds, it's really about the fire sale and Gabriel's plan and all of that.
Right.
And it plays really interesting where you don't know it's a Die Hard movie. And even after you see Bruce Willis pop in, you go, oh, okay, it's a Bruce Willis cop movie. But it's not really spelled out as McClane until, well over a minute when they introduce Lucy and that element of the story. And I, looking back, I'm trying to remember if I knew it was a Die Hard movie when I started watching the trailer, or was this kind of set up in an interesting way where it's like, it's a Bruce Willis action movie, but it kind of was like when the Die Hard reveal happens, I was like, whoa, it's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, this is a movie that the trailer, it accomplished what it needed to do. I was, of course, going to see this movie. And I was going to see it in the theater, and seeing it taking place in D.C., putting John McClane in a different location. I'm sure I knew going in that it was going to be just show a flagrant disregard for technology, and that it did. But it was a bang up, shoot 'em up action film that was starring one of my very favorite characters. Of course, I was going to see this movie, so I think it actually did what it needed to do. And by this point, I feel like I'm used to you telling me not to take it so seriously.
Here. Although I will say, this is the second movie that he's in DC. Don't forget.
Okay,
you forgot.
I forgot.
It's an airport. It doesn't feel like Washington, D.C.
It certainly doesn't feel like Washington, D.C. And it never, because it was shot in so many other places.
Right.
And we spent so much time talking about the fact that it was shot in so many other places. And the book didn't take place there. You can forgive me, I think.
I can.
Please forgive me, Andy, please.
I'm doing America a favor. Is the country willing to pay for it?
FAA just issued a critical alert. The entire network went down.
Transportation system's crashing and they just hit the entire financial sector.
You have no idea who you're dealing with.
I'll take it from here.
This is The Next Reel, everybody. I'm Pete Wright, and that there is Andy Nelson.
Hey.
And we spoil movies. Tonight on the show, McClane is back, and he's bringing the ageist technoculture war with him in 2007's Live Free or Die Hard. Before we get into that, you should learn more about us at thenextreel.com, subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast app, or follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Next Reel.
And if you enjoy this show and are interested in supporting our ongoing work investigating great film, please consider a regular donation through our Patreon page. You'll get to join our back-channel conversations on Slack and gain access to our members-only weekend show, The Saturday Matinee, where we talk about the latest movie gossip, chat about new trailers, and share our movie lists. This week, to celebrate Live Free or Die Hard, we're doing lists of our favorite movies that basically feature fire sales like this one, government shutdowns. Just head on over to patreon.com/thenextreel to learn more.
Officer McClane, I need you to behave.
You said to me, Andy, you said last week that this was the movie you watch more than any other Die Hard movie, I think, except for the first one. Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
Why is that?
Because I love this movie. I love it, love it, love it. It is so much fun from beginning to end. Yes, there is some crazy over-the-top nonsense, but it's kind of become par for the course with the Die Hard franchise. I think that the action sequences are fantastic. I think the character John McClane is written better than almost any of the other films, maybe except for the first one. He's got some really great moments. The relationship with his daughter is really nicely done in this film. The buddy element that we get with this one is great. The story that's happening, the way it unfolds, it's just exciting and interesting. And it worked really well in context of having this kind of older cop being the one who has to take down this tech war. I love it. I think it's just a fantastic watch and a really exciting entry to the franchise.
Well, I agree. This is not a movie that I have watched pretty much. I don't know. Maybe I watched it once or twice when it first came out on home release, but I don't know why. But the first few times I saw it, it didn't become one of those movies that I considered in such high regard. But watching it closely this time around, man, I regret that, because I had a great time with this movie. I should totally watch it more often. There is no shortage of awesome action stunt set pieces, and I think, to your point about how well John McClane is written, I would just tack on that I think Bruce Willis has gotten, progressively better at portraying him. And I think I said early on in the series that my memory of John McClane is that I like him much more older. And this is that John McClane. This is the John McClane that I feel like he's aged into the part. And as much as I know that we've had a lot of John McClane, Bruce Willis is at sort of peak John McClane now. I want to see, I would actually love to see another Die Hard movie with this John McClane in it. I had a wonderful time, and it's sort of highlighted in this sequence in the film where they get their ride to West Virginia, and McClane talks about how there's no one else. There's no one else to do the stuff that I do, and he's saying it not heroically, but really regretfully, remorsefully, and that's sort of the true heart, not just of the film, but of this whole franchise. It's his existential purpose, John McClane, is that he's always in the wrong place at the right time, doing the right thing, and that's I think what makes McClane, and just so cool.
Well, and it's a beautiful moment too, because it is that regret, because he's talking about the broken relationships he has with his wife and his family and his kids, and it's really touching. It's like this is what he kind of chose to do, and it just unfortunately led to the distance that he has with his daughter that we see in this one. And it's played so nicely, and there's a great line that Justin Long's character Matt says to him. He's like, "Well, that's what makes you that guy." And then we get a great kind of a callback to that toward the end of the film. But it's just such a nice moment to have with McClane, because this is a guy who's been doing the right thing for a long time, and really is. I mean, it's wearing him down. I mean, he looks really tired throughout the film. I mean, granted, they're awake for like 36 hours trying to stop these things, but still, it's like he just has that sense about him. And the fact that he keeps on going because, as he says, there's no one else who can do it. I mean, that says so much about McClane, and really, I think why this franchise has lasted as long as it has, because it's a character that you could almost say we all hope we would be if we got into a situation like this. I mean, obviously, we're not all New York City cops who get into these wrong situations. But I mean, he knows a lot of interesting stuff. But I think that it's the way that he approaches the situations that makes him such a powerful character that works really well.
I hear Die Hard 6, he's retired from the force and is a podcaster and tech pundit. And still in the wrong place at the wrong time. It's amazing. The other thing we can't do with this film that we were able to do so deliciously in the first three, we can't lampoon the authorities. There are no dumb cops in this movie, and I adore that. I mean, it's fantastic. And I don't know why that is.
I do think there's something to the fact that this is the first entry into the franchise that is post 9/11. Oh. And I think September 11th, just the way that people felt like, we were all coming together, we're all part of the same team. I think that kind of led to some of the just kind of the focus on that. You didn't want to make, the good guys seem to be like idiots.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're a smart guy. You designed the system after all.
Before we leave the conversation about cops, though, I do have to ask, though, and this may be where they do reflect a little bit of the idiocy, is the fact that where are the cops? Like, why don't they show up? Matt's apartment is getting, attacked to the point where the building seems like it's going to come down. I mean, the amount of shooting and explosions going on there, yet no one else in the building or nearby is calling the cops. I felt like by the time they're in the alley having a fight, that some cops would have been showing up by then.
I agree with you, but I would actually, I can forgive that for the sake of the action beat.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Their absence is a far lesser sin than their presence foolishly.
Here, I agree with
would
that.
you
That's
please
a
write
beautiful
that down
sentiment.
for a cookie of some sort? That should go in a cookie.
Oh, that's
But
great. I love
the
it.
same thing happens. Like at the beginning, we have the the director of the agency. He says, there are 1,000 guys who could pull this thing off, right? We need to go out to local law enforcement and have the local law enforcement go round up these 1,000 guys wherever they may be across the country and bring them to us. And John McClane is the only guy that manages to do it, right? Across on the East Coast, in and around DC, the only guy who's able to do it. I found that also difficult to swallow.
Well, I guess that's not something that's ever bothered me. I mean, they make it seem pretty clear that they pretty much all end up dead.
But there were 1,000, not the 7, 1,000, right? Like the call went out to all 1,000.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
It did.
All right. Okay. So I'm looking too hard at that. I get it. I hear you.
The other cops are just—they're not McClane.
They're not McClane.
They don't have the skills. Like once their low jack stops working, they're just like
guy, forget it. I'm phoning it in.
That's right.
All right. Let's talk about Justin Long, the latest buddy.
I love him. I think he is so funny, and it's great having kind of a young voice paired up with him, and somebody who also is just kind of just the opposite, kind of the yang to Bruce's yin. He's such a wimp. He's just I mean, the hacker element certainly is there, but just everything about him is just so not the fighter, and so it made it really funny to have him as the one that McClane was paired with throughout.
Yeah, I think so too. And he was such a dramatic contrast from Zeus in the movie prior that, yes, he was a buddy. And in every other aspect, he was different, right? He looked different. He was a different age. He sounded different. He had a different purpose. And where I think, McClane needed Zeus in the last movie, he needed him, because he needed a partner, he needed a foil, he needed somebody to help him learn something about himself, right? I mean, there was definitely an awakening that happened, and for Zeus as well. I think arguably a less practical sense of character need than in this movie. In this movie, McClane needs Matt because there is so much, a world of stuff that he is ill-equipped to even approach. Like he can't even speak with authority on some of these subjects. And so he needs Matt, and he needs to have a similar awakening to the wisdom of youth that he feels he carries with the wisdom of age. And I think that ended up playing really, really well and not silly, and it could have been ridiculous, and it just wasn't.
No, it works really nicely. And Justin Long, I think, pulls off kind of the hacking nature of the story, regardless of what you think about the actual hacking itself.
Oh, and I think about it.
How realistic it might be. But I think that they pull off the realities of both of their worlds well enough, and kind of the contrast that they have as they're kind of butting heads and working together to make everything happen. Speaking of Justin Long, I and his tech savvy, I did want to just bring up one point that I forgot to mention with McClane that I love so much. I love that he's this old guy who is really kind of this low tech guy, and he may be low tech, like the whole low jack thing, the conversation that he has at the beginning. But what's great about McClane is he may be low tech, but he's actually really paying attention to stuff that's going on, the tech stuff and everything. Like he keeps bringing things up that people point out, like, for example, the low jack again. He brings that up later in the story to tell them, hey, use the low jack and track this vehicle. He's a very sharp guy, even if he's not as tech savvy as Matt is.
No, that's a really good point, because they could have made him the curmudgeon who disrespects and dismisses the technology, and you're right, he doesn't do that, which I think is great. And the hacking stuff. So yeah, it's silly, and the things that Matt can accomplish with a roll-up USB keyboard, it's amazing. But I think in large part they gloss over it. They move so quickly through the beats that involve actual hacking, like they don't center on it so long that you get lost in it, right? It's not a movie that's about the hacking. It's a means to an end, and the end is get us to the next action beat. For example, when the thug hacker Matt's evil foil is in the van, and he's trying to call up the go codes for the F-35. He just ends up typing, and then suddenly we have this van that's driving down the road connected to the jet, and he probably typed a few words into his little keyboard, and that was magic. But I don't think the movie moves so fast, the pace is so quick that you move through those, that it makes those elements, I think, in my opinion, more forgivable. And I think I think it actually works. I'm surprised that I'm saying that myself, because I'm usually pretty attuned to that stuff. So this ain't no swordfish.
Well, I was going to say, comparing it to the Elizabeth Salander world that we were just in, in our previous series, I think it was interesting to see kind of how Elizabeth dealt with the hacking and I'm forgetting her, the guy that she worked with.
What was his name? Rodent? No, see, all I can think of is Warlock.
No,
that
Warlock,
was in this movie. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, you're right.
Whatever his name is, but the way that the hacking was dealt with there, I mean, you saw a little bit more. It just seemed a little bit more realistic. But I mean, this is a Die Hard film, and they're going to take. I mean, the FBI office looks completely exaggerated for what an FBI office would look like. So same with the power plant, same with the cooling room.
Yeah,
everything is just exaggerated and bigger and designed that way because of the type of film that it is. And I think the hacking falls right into that.
Yeah.
And for that, I completely have no issues with it.
Yeah. There were some elements that caught me. Speaking of Justin Long, first of all, the explosion in the gas plant. After it, there is a sequence where it's practically a different actor. The ADR was so bad. Did you notice this?
I didn't. I'm not.
Oh my God! It's so bad. It's so bad. I just want to call that out. And then there was a fantastic. I don't know. To me, I was laughing out loud. So Justin Long falls backward in this plant, off of his chair, and he falls over a ledge. I have a game on my phone where it's just a dummy falling in a pit that never ends, and your job is to tilt the phone to avoid obstacles. And to me, that was this sequence. He falls off a ledge. He's like, oh my God, there's a ledge. And he lands on a pipe. Oh my God, there's a pipe. And then he falls again. And now he lands on a floor. And oh my God, there's a trap door and he falls through the trap door. Like, he just keeps falling through these obstacles. It just never ends. And by the end, I'm on the floor. It was just really funny. And I feel like I'm kind of alone. But next time you think about it, this would have been the game for Live Free or Die Hard. They could have totally monetized the Justin Long falling experience and made this the Live Free or Fall Hard Justin Long falling game. I'm telling you.
I almost want to go back and just rewatch that again just to catch all of that.
It's really funny.
It sounds extra funny the way you're describing it.
I don't know. Now that I've said it out loud, it's probably not funny at all. But in my head, it's amazing. Amazing.
Fantastic.
He has some great moments, and I think that's a result of his just incredible skill as an improvisational actor.
Yeah, and just the lines that he throws out. I mean, it's just some of the stuff. I know that they did a lot of improv on set and just trying to come up with the little lines here and there. But just things like, when it's like, oh, how are you? I can't remember what Bruce says. It's after the big thing. It's like, you okay? And he's just like, well, I scraped my knee and my asthma's acting up, but yeah, I guess I'm okay. It's just like,
I have really low blood sugar. Can we just pull over? There's an Arby's right there. I'll just get some ketchup packets. It's so good. He's I don't know. I really like Michael Cera, but this is the same sort of kind of type of character that these guys can play so well. And I prefer Justin Long. I think he's a gentle, sort of less acerbic performer, and I feel for him in this role. I think he's great.
Well, and also I think that, and this is just kind of, I don't even think it's necessarily typecasting, but just the fact that he played the Mac in the Apple versus Mac, PC versus Mac commercials, lends something to him about kind of that hipper computer guy that I don't see with Michael Cera. And so to that end, I think that, that characterization that he lived so long in the commercials really kind of benefits what he's doing here.
I don't know. You think that played a hand in him getting the role?
I don't know. I'm very curious if that's something that might have led to it. I don't know for sure, but it certainly is an interesting element. I know that Len Wiseman just really liked Justin Long and thought he would be an interesting actor for it, but I don't know if that's the specific reason for it.
Because trust me, Bruce Willis is a PC.
Yes, if he ever got that far, yes.
Okay, so we have one of those moments, right? We have one of those moments where they're standing outside and they don't know how they're going to get where they're going to go, and thank God they turn around and there's a helicopter. Ergo, someone better know how to fly a helicopter. And that someone with whom we have great experience believing that he does not like to fly and he cannot fly ends up being John McClane. He actually has taken some lessons and now he flies helicopters poorly.
You know, they write it into the script where I don't end up having a problem with it. I find myself forgiving them of that.
Well, of course you do, because you're all soft on this stuff. I'm just saying I was jarred by it. I think on reflection, I think I buy it, but I will tell you, it stopped me. And having not watched this movie in a long time, it stopped me thinking, oh my goodness, that is a violation of the rules that they set up. And they glossed over I took some lessons, face your fears and all that stuff. I'm not sure they had earned enough of McClane being the open-minded progressive who does things like facing his fears intentionally, right? He's a guy who reacts. He doesn't go out and, I just don't see him as a guy who goes out and, starts taking yoga, starts taking helicopter lessons, starts doing things to improve his situation beyond just responding to them the only way he knows how. He's a blunt instrument. And so it stopped me in watching the movie. It took me out of the movie because it felt like a violation of the rules that they'd set up in the narrative.
I can agree with you, but to a certain extent I can, because in the second one, he's in the helicopter as they're flying out and he's getting ready to jump on the jet wing and he's like, I hate to fly. And she's like, well, what are you doing here? I hate to lose more, or whatever he says.
Right.
And I feel like I can see McClane, one, being the kind of guy who's just like, he hates to lose, and he's been in enough situations where flying has been involved where he's just like, I'm going to have to deal with that. Because I don't want to have to lose because of that again. And so I can see it happening. And two, I also think that, and I know it's not necessarily that strong, but I do like that they end it with, it's like, face your fears and all that. And Justin Long's like, did it work? Not really. And I like the fact that they end it that way, because it's like, it hasn't really worked. He still hates flying, yet here he is doing it. So
yeah, I mean, I see your perspective. I really do. I just feel like it's one of those fine line elements, and I get it. But it took me a second. We have Silent Bob stunt casting.
Is it? I was thinking about this quite a bit, because I'm like, the thing about him popping in. This is 2 years after Wedding Crashers. And it felt very much like Will Ferrell in that film as pretty much the same guy. Not quite as tech, but, still living in his mom's basement sort of guy, right?
Right.
And so I felt like they kind of wrote the character a little bit that way. It's never really bothered me. I think it's kind of fun. I kind of like Kevin Smith as the guy who would be doing that, because it just seems like something that if Kevin Smith never quite got his first feature film off the ground, it seems like what would actually be happening with him, because he just seems like that sort of guy. I don't know. It probably speaks terribly of Kevin Smith, but it's just, or at least my impression of him, but it seems like he's just kind of that schlubby sort of guy who's really into all the action figures and all that sort of stuff. And maybe not as tech savvy as Warlock is, but I don't know. I kind of like the casting of him as it. As far as the Silent Bob aspect of it, that's never really played to me, because he's really only Silent Bob in his own movies.
No, I know. It's being a smart ass. I actually agree with you. He felt a little old to me in the to be believably a friend of Justin Long's from his youth. They felt a little off age to me, but otherwise I really enjoyed him. And frankly, it's that's the legit sort of hacker stereotype, right? Like, He's the one who's like super brilliant in his basement, totally wired in and doing things he shouldn't. And you can kind of see how he would escalate into a point of having a CB and having, being able to open a channel to police and emergency services. Like I weirdly, I think Kevin Smith is one of the more believable technological components of this film.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he definitely seems like he's not only the tech guy who lives in his mom's basement, but he's also a prepper.
Yeah,
he's got everything
totally
ready.
Right. Simon Dugan is the cinematographer on this. This introduced some non-trivial jiggly monkey into the camera work.
There was the camera work was a lot wilder in this one, as was the editing. There are times that I was watching this. Specifically this time where I was taking notes, saying, there's a lot more shots and a lot more cuts in this than we've had so far. Maybe it's on par with Rennie Harlan. I don't know if I have a comparison. I couldn't find it on Cinemetrics. They didn't have this one listed from what I could find. But but I did note that there were some times where there were shots that were edited in and cuts that I was like, gosh, that really didn't work for me. Why did they cut it that way? Why did they shoot it that way? On the whole, I don't really have too many problems. I know some people have real issues with Len Wiseman in the way that he kind of structures his shots and builds his films. On the whole, I really don't have any issues with him. I enjoy what he does in the Underworld films. I enjoy what he does here. But there are times I don't find him as clean an action director as we've seen from like John McTiernan, for example.
Well, and I think the problem is that sometimes that camera work in combination with just not having the material to cut together some of these more vibrant sequences leaves them feeling just straight up sloppy. I thought the fight scene in Cooling Tower 7, which is between obviously McClane and Rand, the fantastic Cyril Raffaelli, was a mess. Right, it was the result of this crazy jiggly monkey stuff, and I can't keep up with what these guys are doing, and I think it's to a discredit of some fantastic on-screen action and stunt performances, and I think this film suffers as a result of some of these issues that frustrates me. On the other hand, straight up single best one shot in this entire film is again Raffaelli jumping off a building in a single tracking shot, falling down, grabbing onto the stupid fire escapes and fences and trash from like the sixth story off the roof of this building and landing on the ground. That was straight up amazing. And it was shot very, very well, and I felt like they appreciated that stunt. You could tell they worshipped that stunt to a degree that I think they didn't worship as much of the wonderful work going on in that fight scene.
That's interesting, because that fight scene is not one I've ever had issues with. I actually find it cut together quite well. So I wonder if it's just maybe I've watched it so many times it just doesn't faze me anymore. But I have found other areas a little more problematic, less so in the fights. Actually, though, I find that interesting that the cutting style and the editing in that fight is what was tough for you. An area where I actually found some editing difficulty was, and it's not even related to action. It's really just the way that the scenes cut together. It's how do they pinpoint the car that is carrying McClane and Matt early in the film when they're riding with Agent Johnson in the early in the film. Mm-hmm. And that's one of those situations where if you listen really hard, and my wife and I went back and listened several times to the audio, because it's just edited so roughly and so quickly that it goes from them scanning the radios to all of a sudden, we've got a hit, here he is, we found him. But there's the actual quote evidence of them finding that is so buried in the audio that, we really had to listen several times before we could even pinpoint, oh no, they do actually say it. It's so deep in there. So, there are areas where I think some of the ways that they were working on making this, it does end up getting rushed, whether it's, the fight scene for you or some of the other scenes for me.
It's another holiday film. It's not a Christmas film.
This is our first 4th of July. The third one kind of skipped holidays altogether and just went for summer. And this one they pinpointed the 4th of July weekend. And I guess that's because of the patriotic nature of the mashups.
Maybe. I guess. I didn't feel like This film for me is not inseparable from The Holiday in a way that, the first Die Hard really is for me now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's because it's taking place on the 4th of July weekend. It's not like, people are going to start putting this on every 4th of July to watch it. I don't think people really do that anyway. Maybe Independence Day. I don't know what people do movie wise, but it is interesting that they did choose very specifically to make it happen over a holiday weekend.
Yeah, I watched this movie thanks to the fantastic Movies Anywhere service. I was I was not at my home system when I watched this, so I watched it on the unlocked version on YouTube, which is so cool that that's even a possibility. And so I did not watch the unrated version of this movie. When I went back just tonight to start watching some of the behind-the-scenes stuff in my iTunes Extras, I realized that the iTunes Extra includes an unrated version of this movie. So we have here the theatrical, which is a PG-13 Die Hard movie, which is a first. The others are R-rated Die Hard movies. And then this new animal, the unrated movie, which I assume was targeting an R rating. I don't know.
It's the unrated version is just the R-rated version.
Okay.
That,
what is the difference?
That's all it is.
And what is your take?
Well, it's interesting because, they went into the making of this film with all intentions of just making an R-rated Die Hard movie. It wasn't until at least 3 weeks of production had gone by where the studio told them they wanted it to be PG-13. And that's because, by reducing the rating, they can get more of an audience in. I mean, it's the same issue that the superhero franchises have always been frustrated with, or not frustrated with, some of them, as they try to keep characters like Wolverine in the PG-13 world. And it's they finally were able to break out of it with Deadpool and Logan, but it's been a real challenge because they know they can get more people in the seats if they keep it at least a PG-13. That's what 20th Century Fox wanted to do with this. I mean, I mentioned it last week. Maybe they got more, or maybe Fox was funding the entire film this time, and so they wanted to guarantee that they were going to get more money and not some third party who is going to come in and give them some funding and take all the foreign money or something like that. I don't know, but they were really pushing to get more money out of this one. And what happened is, Len Wiseman and his writers and Bruce Willis and everyone had to start, shooting scenes that, okay, we've got to do this. Okay, let's do it this way. Now let's do it the non-swearing way. And they started having to play that game throughout. And it's interesting listening to them as they talk about the changes when they had to start making the movie go down from the R to the PG-13. I mean, squibs, they could do bloody squibs when it was R. For the PG-13, it had to be kind of, not the bloody squibs. The sound effects had to be not as loud. Gunshots couldn't be as loud. There was just so many different elements. There were things like when Bruce Willis, when he's in Matt's apartment, he reaches through the wall and pulls the guy's head back and breaks his neck. They couldn't show that shot of him breaking the guy's neck in the PG-13 version because it was just too much. So it's really an interesting set of things that they had to do to bring it down to PG-13. Now, I still think they made a very successful Die Hard film that worked in the PG-13 world. And I loved it in the theater when I saw it. I didn't feel like it was necessarily PG-13. I thought it felt like Die Hard. I guess I wasn't paying attention to rating, but having only watched the unrated version since I bought it, I just feel like it's really kind of a core part of Die Hard. It felt like a strange, sidestep for Fox to make that choice.
Yeah, I think so too. It was very strange, but you're right. There was nothing in here, and it didn't shock me the lack of violence and swearing in this movie. I actually still had a great time. I still had a great time at an innocent movie. Here's the thing that I don't think we understand because of our lack of experience in fluid dynamics and engineering. And that is, Andy, what's up with the gas used as a weapon in our gas systems, our national gas pipelines?
I love that. It's so absurd. It's like, send all the gas their way, right? And somehow it's on fire already.
It's already on fire by the time it gets there.
How does that happen?
What happened? You guys terrify me. Like, that's maybe the most frightening thing of the entire thing. It's like a whole new anxiety to carry around. I have natural gas in my house. Why is it not already on fire when it gets here?
Maybe it is, Pete.
And I would never know.
Maybe your house has a stopper and you just don't know. You're unaware. It's all burning
fired.
underneath you.
Oh my God, it's burning. Andy, you're telling me I'm about ready to just go up at any minute.
Got to be prepared, man, just in case.
Jesus.
It is crazy. I've never understood. Like, why is the gas on fire in the pipes? I was like, they're sending all the gas away. Okay, they're going to suffocate them. They're going to die of, suffocation of breathing the gas fumes is kind of what I assumed would happen. But no, en fuego. You know what I'm going to love about this, Pete, is if our listeners respond to us and say, what are you talking about?
You are
Didn't
so
you see
stupid.
The thing? This will turn into the welcome to the party, pal from this movie. It's like, God, I can't wait.
Didn't you see? There was a 5-minute sequence of a guy trying to light a match. How could you have missed that?
Oh, man. Good stuff.
So good. Okay, well, we do have to say this is, for me, it's probably the best way to take down a villain, John McClane's final confrontation with Thomas Gabriel. Awesome.
It is so great. I mean, there's nothing that beats the slow-mo fall of Hans Gruber in the first movie, but still, this one, the way that he actually he shoots himself through the hole that Gabriel just shot in him. It's just absurd, but it fits McClane so brilliantly. I absolutely love it, and to take him down that way, I think is just fantastic. Plus, it gets the great entry for our Yippie-ki-yay line that we get in this film.
It does, and actually, speaking of that, how would you rank this Yippie-ki-yay? The Yippie-ki-yay? Yippie-ki-yay number 4 with the other 3.
That's this one's way up there for me because it's a climactic Yippie-ki-yay. The first movie is an interesting one because it's not set up to be like the big line or like the final climactic line. It just happens at a particular point. I mean, you do get Hans trying to say it at the end, but it's not the same. The second one, let's see, he says it as he lights the fire and blows the plane up, right? In the third movie, he says it's like right at the very end after as a whisper almost, as he after he's blown up Simon and his helicopter. It's kind of a much more passive Yippie-ki-yay. This one,
it's a passive. You're right. It's a passive Yippie-ki-yay.
Because he's whispering, he's like yippee. It's like the denouement of the moment. It's the denouement Yippie-ki-yay.
Yeah.
So you've got the first one. It's kind of like just the setup Yippie-ki-yay.
It's the first one. They didn't even know Yippie-ki-yay was going to be a line.
Right.
It
wasn't
just a
thing.
thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. The second one, it's they're like, that was a great line. Let's use it to really blow up the bad guys in this one. And so that became the climax in the second one. And it's the climax in the fourth one too. The fourth one, I think, does it a lot better. And the third one is just kind of a whispery kind of turd is what the third one turns into, unfortunately. So if I had to rank them, I'd say my favorite actually is probably the fourth one because of the way it's used. The first one is probably second only because it wasn't designed to be the cool line that it became. I'm torn with that. I may have to say the first one's first. But anyway, then second and then fourth.
For me, I think it is the first one because it's the first one, then the fourth, then the second, then the third. However, I would say that there is a bonus. The Yippie-ki-yay in the alternate ending of 3 is a better Yippie-ki-yay than 3 itself. And so that I would absolutely insert after number 1. So 4, 1, 3 alternate, 2.
2.
Yeah.
3. Then 3.
Then 3.
At the very end.
At the very end.
And then we didn't even mention, but the Yippie-ki-yay line in the trailer for this one was a completely different Yippie-ki-yay that wasn't even used in the film.
As a result, it is the 6th Yippie-ki-yay in my ranking, the trailer Yippie-ki-yay.
Oh,
yeah.
We're going to have to remember all this. So next week when we throw in the fifth
notes.
one, try to remember which one was that again?
Yes.
Good stuff.
The ranking of Yippie-ki-yays. This should have been our list for the Saturday matinee this week. Best Yippie-ki-yays. Anyway, how did this movie get made, Andy?
So it's interesting. This actually, I didn't realize, but they actually had started trying to put this together much, much earlier, like after the third one. And they were moving along. They had this plot based on a script that David Marconi, who had great success with Enemy of the State, he had written the script ww3.com. And they kind of were using that plot to kind of form this story. That plot was from this article that we'll be talking about here in a minute. But unfortunately, because of September 11th, that shows you how long ago this was. They felt like, this whole takedown of the country, it's really not something that we can do right now. And so the production stalled, put it on a big delay. After the delay, as time went by, Doug Richardson came in to do some rewrites. He turned it into this Die Hard 4, and then Mark Baumbach took it over. And it's always so interesting. I find the way that the Writers Guild works, because Doug Richardson, who did the rewrites to make it Die Hard 4, got no credit. Mark Baumbach and David Marconi were the two who ended up getting credit. So. Anyway, it did finally get made, and here we are.
We put the link to this article, A Farewell to Arms by John Carlin, in the show notes, and I think that you should go read it if you're interested in this movie. It's frankly an interesting read. It originally appeared in Wired in 1987, and it's got some really interesting elements in it. It's one of those sort of terror news articles, like you should be afraid and you don't even know it. But there are some really interesting comments and notes that he pulls out of, for example, the Chinese Army article on the nature of the information war that is to come, and just how vulnerable we are as a result, because we're not thinking about this stuff, and it unfolds in this Marconi script.
What I find so strange, though, is that this John Carlin article was credited, because other than kind of like the vague concept, it's like there's no story here. It's like this could happen.
Yeah.
But somehow they pulled the script from just the kind of the concept that he's talking about. And that was enough to warrant saying based on the article by. That really surprised me when I read this article, because I'm like, okay, it's a tech article talking about tech and, what could happen and kind of scenarios, but in no way is there any story.
It makes you wonder if Marconi is friends with Carlin somehow, because
Sure.
this was a credit of grace and gratitude, clearly, for the inspiration that was unwarranted. Like I clearly could have gotten away, as you say, without that.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's do the deep scene dive, Andy.
Let's do it.
All right, I'm going to have you set it up, because I think this is your big favorite sequence, right? In terms of the big action elements.
I love them all, but this one's awfully fun. It's just, it's over the top and brilliant. This is the moment. So we have McClane, who is, he's trying to catch the bad guys, who now have both his daughter and Matt as hostages. They hop in a van and a semi and roll out of this secret, government bunker that they're in. McClane sees them. He jumps on the truck, takes over the truck. He's chasing them in the semi, and there's an F-35 flies up that had been called. And we start our scene right after Gabriel gets on the line with the pilot and says, "The terrorist is in a semi. Take him down." And that's where we kick things off.
What do you love about this that makes this a definitive Die Hard 4 moment?
Not just a Die Hard 4 moment, but a Die Hard moment. This is Bruce Willis as McClane getting into a situation that is so above, what he should normally be able to handle. It's just absurd that he's in this semi, and here he is having to duke it out basically with an F-35 that is flying around these freeways trying to blow him up. And it's over the top. It's intense action. They do some amazing, real stunt work. They do some great model work. The effects, the action, everything is in here for a Die Hard moment. And yes, it is pretty absurd and over the top. with some of the stuff that ends up happening in here. The weirdly multi-layer corkscrew freeway that I have no idea what is going on with that thing. The fact that it's falling so perfectly, the freeway, as it's collapsing, that his semi can kind of keep driving up and go up this ledge and then fall down that ledge. It works so nicely, but it's just like a beautiful action sequence to watch, because the absurdity all works in context of what they're doing here and makes for a riotous fun time.
I think it does. And well, I say it like that because this is, for me, this is, as you say, it represents kind of the heart and soul of McClane, because it asks the question, what if he's always placed in face of the hardest decision he could make, and we play that out to its ridiculous conclusion? Like, at every single point, he's only given two choices. He chooses the harder one. Eventually, he's going to be on this roundabout freeway getting shot at by an F-35. And I think it's ridiculous, and yet I have forgiven so much by this point in the movie. The movie has so much earned credit for me that by the time they go down this particular rabbit hole, I'm kind of okay with it. I'm amazed because from a straight up integration of visual effects and special effects, it's really beautiful. I mean, the just the truck driving stunts alone, being able to put that sort of 2-tractor semi on its side wheels, for straight up 6 seconds on that bridge is amazing. Like, it's just very cool driving. And then to do it with these digital, freeways falling on top of and behind it it just looks great. So I think it's really worth slowing down and watching and appreciating all the work that went into this sequence. The only thing I think it would have been better is if at some point McClane had the opportunity to say, "Now I have an F-35, ho ho ho," and I think they lost that. He jumps out onto the tail of the jet, and that's when, okay, come on.
So good.
He does slide all the way down that street, though. The kind of
the freeway is
yeah.
and that to me, I mean, I don't know if you've ever actually walked on a freeway or touched an actual freeway, but it's
hot.
It's not smooth. It's not smooth. It is rough rock, and I just can only imagine, him getting to the bottom, and he's going to have to be sitting in one of those inflatable donuts forever because he's going to have scraped all the skin off of his backside as he went down that thing. Ay.
I love that your mind goes straight to the posterior rehabilitation of John McClane.
Yeah, that's what happens between 4 and 5, right?
He's going to need a donut and some salve. Soup, salve, and a donut. His poor sits bones.
Yeah, McClane goes through a lot. He's torn up and brutalized, and he walks out. And that's, again, that goes to just McClane. It's the nature of this character. He's always walking out of these absurd situations. But, going back to just the stunt work and everything, there are some great stunts. Now, I mean, this one may not have all the crazy, the fantastic platform jumping sort of stunts that we had earlier in the film, but there are just some great stunts throughout. And Brad Martin, as the stunt coordinator, along with John Brannigan, the second unit stunt coordinator, I mean, they did some amazing work putting the stuff together. It was really kind of a goal of Willis and Wiseman, as they put the film together, to use as little CG as possible and really do as much practical effects, real stunt work as they could, and only use CG. I mean, there are still a lot of CG shots in the film, but it's really doing digital composites of some of the stuff that's happening or enhancing the shots. And I mean, you certainly get a lot of that here with, kind of enhancing the freeway elements and adding all of the different layers. But largely, I mean, it is a semi driving on its side. It is, they have a full scale model of the F-35 that McClane is rolling around on. There's some great model shots of the smaller F-35s as it's flying around that they insert. I mean, they do a really great job of integrating these elements that just makes it feel very real.
I think so too. I think it's really, really terrific. And Patrick Tatopoulos on the production design, the way they actually match, this was shot in Baltimore and LA, made to look like DC. And to my eye, I didn't notice any of the stupid stuff, the license plates, the signage. Like, to me, it was legit. It looked like a legit match, and I thought that was great. The attention to detail looked really good.
Yeah, and likewise, the work that Tatopoulos is doing here, making all the chunks of freeway and everything.
Yeah.
I mean, it really, it feels like a real environment, even if I don't buy the triple decker corkscrew freeway.
Yeah, just the utility of it. Where are they sending people with that kind of a freeway?
It's like.
Because it's like there's nothing else around it, right? It's just there's no roads in. There's only one road in, and it's from that sort of sub layer all the way to the top of what? Nothing.
Oh, I can't wait to see.
You only go up from here.
Good stuff.
Bruce does not end up in a sleeveless undershirt, thanks to Denise Wingate.
Well, that's right. It's still rather dirty, though.
Yeah, it's dirt. No, he's filthy. Oh, he's filthy.
Filthy, bloody, covered in stuff. I thought it was interesting as far as the blood goes that Bruce actually does his own blood makeup, I guess. He, I don't know if he's just been doing it so long in these action movies that he has a very deft hand, and so he applies his own blood makeup.
What is the story on? Did you read the story about him getting kicked by Maggie Q's stunt double?
Oh yeah. She was. It was the kick when she comes down as he's trying to climb out of the car in the elevator shaft, and her stiletto heel actually hit him right in the eyebrow and ripped his skin open. And he didn't think it was that bad. And then when Len Wiseman looked at it, he's just like, no, we should take you to the hospital. Because he could see his bone under there. So I was like, yeah. Maybe want to get that looked at.
Yeah, right. Marco Beltrami does the music.
Unfortunately, Michael Kamen passed away between Die Hard 3 and this film, which was a shame. I thought, he was a great composer, did some great scores. But I think Marco Beltrami does a good job of integrating little hints of some of the McClane elements that we've heard so far. It's not overtly like a Die Hard score, like where we're hearing a lot of the same stuff, but I think there are enough hints of it that it still feels kind of a part of the world.
I actually have a fondness for Beltrami's other scores. I think he's done some really good stuff, even in movies that I haven't, necessarily liked all that much. I think he's done some really solid work, especially his action scores. They're worth a listen, and this is another one. So, the guy's been around doing this stuff for a long time. And he's got a movie coming up that there's a good chance we might be talking about it on the film board, A Quiet Place, coming up April 6th. And I'm really curious about that because so much of the movie involves, sound design and what they do with sound and how is the score going to interact with that. So I think it's a real showcase. It's great to see he's an incredibly talented guy.
Yeah, I agree.
Are you kidding? Steve Nelson?
I know. Oh my God. I saw that. I couldn't stop laughing.
Are you kidding? Sound by Anna Belmer. And how did I not notice this, Andy? Okay, everybody sit down. Andy Nelson has been a guy that we've been following this is in terms of his sound design and mixing in Hollywood because he's a 1,000-time Oscar nominee and he's fantastic. Anna Belmer and Andy Nelson did the sound on this with Steve Nelson production sound mixer.
Yeah, it's a little weird.
It's your dad.
I know. It's like me and my dad doing the sound on the movie. It's very strange.
How is that possible? And that it's not actually you and your dad, your actual dad. Andy.
Such a weird thing.
That's amazing. No discredit or disrespect to Jason Jennings, who's also on the list, but is not actually related to Andy Nelson. Neither are Steve Nelson or Andy Nelson in this case.
And,
but man, dare to dream.
Yeah, right. I do think that it is important we should point out there's a great making of documentary about this film called Analog Hero in a Digital Age that kind of goes through the different departments and kind of the work they're doing. One of the departments that I think really is highlighted nicely is the sound department, the kind of the post-sound world. between Anna Belmer and Andy Nelson, listening to them talk along with the designer about the way that they do it, it's like I finally felt like I understood the two different Oscar categories, basically. It's like, oh, okay, so that's what's going on here. That's what these two different worlds are doing. It was really enlightening, I thought. So it's definitely worth a check out if somebody gets a chance. I don't know if it's only available if you buy the movie or if it's on YouTube. I didn't check YouTube.
I didn't check YouTube either, which we should do. But it is on the iTunes extras and the Blu-ray and the extra feature stuff.
All that stuff.
Yeah, it's on all that stuff. Nicholas de Toth is the editing. We've talked a little bit about it. It's faster cutting, and apart from some what I see as some sloppy sequences, overall strong and lives up to Wiseman's I think overall visual narrative.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it works. I think it works just fine in context of the way that the film is unfolding. I mean, he had worked with Len Wiseman on Underworld Evolution, so they already had kind of a shorthand. And I just felt like, again, I didn't necessarily agree with all the cuts, likewise with all the shots, but at the same time, I felt like for the most part, they did a really good job of amping things up.
Direction by Len Wiseman, as we've talked to sort of been banding his name about, Andy, one of the things that you said last week was some people don't appreciate Len Wiseman's style in this movie. What did you mean by that?
Well, not just in this movie, but I think in general. I think he is a filmmaker, kind of a younger filmmaker who's, I say that he's my age, who's taken, big action films, Underworld Evolution, Total Recall, and he's done, he kind of goes for kind of a darker tone, but he also introduces a lot more cuts and the camera works a little rougher, and I think that's just kind of the style that he's gone for. It's a very different type of action directing than what we've talked about in the last few films with Rennie Harlin or John McTiernan. He definitely falls more in the Rennie Harlin side of things. I think John McTiernan, as we saw in the past couple films that he did in the series, he's much more patient with his action. And yes, he found a way to balance those shorter cuts with longer cuts. Len doesn't seem to do that as much. It's very much a faster cutting style and pace and everything. I don't think it's quite Michael Bay, but it's definitely a little more amped up than what we would get. And I think that's what bugs some people, is they don't feel like Len necessarily takes the time to make sure that he's gotten the camera positioned in the perfect spot for a shot because he's going to hold it for 6 seconds. He kind of seems to wing it a little more and say, okay, I'm going to get a shot here and here and here and here, and then we'll just figure out a way to cut it all together. I don't necessarily have a problem with that. I think it's an interesting way that he puts it together, but it does end up meaning that there are some hits and misses with some of the shots throughout.
I have no problem with that. But the only thing I would say is, and I got into this conversation with friend and the friend and listener Ocean this weekend. Ocean, shout out. How you doing, man? Look, we had this conversation, and it was about James Bond, and his perspective on this was that the Daniel Craig James Bonds are not James Bond movies. That in fact they should have been, call them something else. They should have been something else. Great stories, but they're not James Bond. And it got me thinking. Even though I disagree, agree to disagree. What I do think is that there is a case to be made by some, with whom I also disagree, that this film starts to leave behind some of the tonal, some of the narrative sort of choices and feelings of a Die Hard film, and that may be in the hands of Len Wiseman. What do you think?
Well, but I mean, you could say the same thing about Rennie Harlin when he came in. It's a franchise that this is the third director of 4 films. Next week we'll be having the 4th director of 5 films. They're all bringing different things to the table, and Bond is a different beast because it had several directors who lasted for a very long time with that franchise,
right?
And
left a much firmer stamp on it.
Right, absolutely. I mean, I think if you look at something like what's the guy's name, John Glenn, who did a large chunk of the Bond films, he had a very specific style that ended up kind of fitting in with what people were expecting for Bond at the time. It doesn't mean that the Daniel Craig films aren't Bond films. It's taken, it's a new helm and everything. Likewise here. I mean, it's just this franchise just happens to have a lot more directors trying their hand at it than Bond might have. I don't know.
It'll be more interesting. More interesting, certainly, if we end up with a Die Hard in 15 years that is actually played by a different person, where John McClane gets a different actor. And I, for one, would not have a problem with that.
That it would be well. I mean, we already have Len Wiseman signed up to do Die Hard Year One. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious to see kind of what happens in that one and how that ends up unfolding. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's going to be an interesting franchise, and Fox is going to probably want to keep using it as long as they can, long after Bruce Willis is kind of said, you know what, I'm done. I'm a little exhausted. I'm too old, whatever.
Yeah, right. Timothy Olyphant comes in as our big bad, Thomas Gabriel. Man, great.
Yeah, he works so well as the villain. I mean, there's something to be said for the Grubers, but I think that Timothy Olyphant just has a presence and just seems to work as this tech villain. I love him.
Yeah, and I love him because the tech is a tool. He's not just a nerd. He's actually an incredibly savvy politician, and he understands this fire sale not just as a systems administrator, but as somebody who knows what the impact will be on the body politic and on civil services and on what it does to the people. And I think that makes him just sort of a much more multi-layered kind of character. I love that his mission is, like, his ultimate want is to be heard. And he felt like he hasn't been heard. And so he's going to prove a point. He's going to prove that what he was saying all along is the truth, and you should have listened to me. And I feel like that's ultimately it made him an interesting guy, and an interesting sort of, that fuels kind of the undercurrent of a lot of angry nerds. And I think it's pretty good. I mean, and I say this as one of them, like as somebody who's worked in a large organization in the technical department, and feeling like, I raise a flag that nobody listens to.
The other nice thing about him is that, aside from the point that you just made about it, what he's really after is wanting to be heard and all this, at the same time, he really is in it for the money.
Yeah.
And right. I thought that was still a great through line that they've had throughout the franchise.
Yeah. It's a heist.
It's a heist.
He's a Vanderbilt?
Yeah, I guess so. Did you know that?
No. That's why I said it with a question mark.
Yeah. Well,
he's a Vanderbilt,
you could say with
question mark?
You could know, but still like, wow. Yeah, apparently he's of the Vanderbilts.
So he doesn't actually need the money. He really does just want to be heard. Is what you're saying.
He really does.
All
yes.
right.
He's a descendant of the prominent Vanderbilt and Olyphant families of business people, and his ancestry includes Russian, Jewish, English, German, Scottish, Dutch, and Irish. Now you know.
Fascinating. Now you know. Dum. Maggie Q as My Lynn. I love Maggie Q. She's a straight up action hero.
Oh, she's so good in this, isn't she?
She really is. She is. I love it that she starts out kind of as she's the right-hand woman, right? I mean, she's running the con. She's the voice. She's the sexy voice running the con. And then she is a dominating physical force. And she's fantastic. And as an actress, that the kinds of stunts that she does on her own, we mentioned that she had a stunt woman who cut Bruce Willis, but doing a stunt that really Maggie Q could have and probably wanted to do very badly. She was doing things like, actually dropping off of the Ford as it's hanging in that 4-story elevator shaft and catching the bumper and climbing back up. Like, she's just an incredibly strong and capable performer. She's unreal.
She could take Cliff Curtis, that's for sure.
I love Cliff Curtis. We haven't talked about him in a long time. Sunshine was the last time we talked about him. He's Kiwi, and I think he's great. And he would have been the character to make an idiot, and they didn't. And I think that was to the movie's service.
Absolutely. No, he's great. I always love seeing Cliff Curtis pop up and stuff. And it was nice having him as kind of a like you said, an FBI director who I could buy into.
Yeah, I think so. And paired with him, we had Jelko Ivanek as Agent Molino, and he was also great as kind of the right-hand guy, Waxworks, sort of the gatekeeper for Cliff Curtis. And I liked seeing him in here.
Yep. We haven't talked about Mary Elizabeth Winstead at all as Lucy, John's daughter. I think that she is so great. She brings such great presence to the film as Lucy Gennaro at the start and then McClane at the end. But like the opening with her, I think is just a fantastic way to kind of introduce us to the world of McClane. And, here he is with all these family problems. Love it. And then to see her as such this reflection of her father that we get later in the film, I just love it. She's got that great line when she's on the walkie. She's like, now there's only 5 of them, Dad, or whatever it is. It's great.
So great. She is just wonderful. And the reason we haven't mentioned her yet is because ultimately, if we're not careful, you and I will talk about her for an hour and a half.
Absolutely.
Remember her in Scott Pilgrim? She was so good. Oh my God.
They just talked about her on the Speakeasy, or not the Speakeasy. They just talked about her on the trailer rewind for Faults.
That's right. There she was. She was also, she's so good at everything. She's the best. Tim Russ. I just mentioned Tim Russ because I was a big fan of him in Star Trek.
Yes, that's right. He does pop up here briefly.
He was, yeah.
If anyone starts to play like the buffoon officials,
yeah,
it's him and the other guy.
Yeah, right. I guess they you're right. They veer toward it, and it's at least they got the Agent Johnson joke in there. That was funny.
I love that.
And Cyril Raffaelli, we already mentioned him as Rand. What's the deal with him as a representative of all these thugs? Why are they French?
That's the weirdest thing that I've never really understood because, we don't have a French contingent leading it. I mean, Thomas Gabriel, played by Timothy Olyphant, certainly isn't French. Maggie Q's not French. There's plenty of non-French people in their van that they're working with, but all of the thugs that are going around are French. And I don't get it.
Yeah. It doesn't make any sense.
It's just a weird little
but
thing.
But they're really good. I mean, they're good. Some of these, when the guy, he gets hit by the car on the chain link fence and then they spring him, they like do the mousetrap move and they spring him 30 feet in the air into on the dumpster. That's an amazing, just straight up physical stunt. That is these guys got beaten.
That is crazy.
Just fantastic.
Yeah, they do some great work. It's it's kind of that introduction. I don't know if it's the introduction. I really can't remember when that sort of like leaping around from platform to platform really got started, but it certainly was in the peak of all of that.
Well, it was I think still pretty new, and that's why it was so novel. I think the real keystone sort of sequence was the opening to Casino Royale. Yeah.
Which was a year before.
Right.
Yeah, that might have been kind of where it all kicked off.
Yeah. And the guy, I don't remember the guy's name who did it in Casino Royale. It wasn't him, but I know it was this guy, Raffaelli, and the other guy in Casino Royale that are often co-credited as sort of the founders of this in France. And so I think they were right on the early edge of this just fantastic stunts.
Well, and that's how they cast this guy as Rand, because they saw like a YouTube video of him jumping around and they like, this is crazy. Let's get him and make him a bad guy in the movie.
So this is, of course, the sport is parkour, and it's obviously it's all over the place in entertainment at this period. It had been Luc Besson actually is the first director to hire parkour practitioners as stunt performers, and he did it in Taxi 2 in 1998. So, it's been around longer. I don't think it became super popular until Casino Royale, as we said. But in 2004, Besson wrote District 13, which is another that had a bunch of parkour chase sequences starring David Bell and Cyril Raffaelli. And so, it was in that mid-2000s that we had the District 13s and District 13 Ultimatum, which was 2 years after this movie, that was big in with parkour. Sebastian Foucan was the parkour artist in Casino Royale. He also did Bourne Ultimatum.
Oh, interesting.
So it's really interesting. And then so they're talking about parkour and Live Free or Die Hard with Raffaelli, and then Prince of Persia: Sands of Time, choreographed by Dave Bell. And it was all right around this period from 2004 to 2012, 11-12, run in 2013. It's all that was really the height of parkour.
I don't know the history of it, but it really feels like it had to have come from some of the crazy stuff that Jackie Chan was doing back like in the 70s in some of his movies.
Yeah.
Even into the 80s and 90s, like when he's jumping through ladders and, just like the way he does crazy stuff. It seems like it evolved into this.
Although no reference to Jackie Chan on the Wikipedia page, so no credit from these guys in terms of the writers on this page. But I think you're exactly right. I mean, I think there's no doubt that there is a connection to his amazing stunt work and fight choreography. But these are the guys who took it to the street running.
Right. So moving on, what's another interesting tidbit about this movie, Pete? This movie, when this came out on DVD, this was actually the first movie to actually include a digital copy of the film. From this point on, it's grown into what it is now with all these digital copies all over the place. Now you don't even need to buy the movie anymore. You just get the digital copy. So,
oh, what sheer delight. DRM on our computer video. Thank you, Die Hard. How did it do in award season?
This was it's one of those ones where it got noticed for kind of the action and stuff that it was doing. 3 wins, 16 other nominations. At the Saturn Awards, it was nominated for Best Action Adventure Thriller Film. It lost to 300. And Justin Long was actually nominated for Best Supporting Actor, but he lost to Javier Bardem for No Country for Old Men. At the Golden Schmoes, I thought it was funny that it was nominated for the biggest surprise of the year, but it did lose to Superbad, which I guess I didn't realize was something that was people were surprised by. The Golden Trailer Awards was nominated for Best Action, but it lost to The Dark Knight. And what I think is an important one to point out, at the World Stunt Awards, it did win Best Stunt Coordinator and or Second Unit Director. It was also nominated for Best Fight with Ming Qiu and Dane Farwell, but they lost to 300 for the Spartans fight with the Persians with the swords and spears in a bloody battle. No wires were used, all self-thrown ground pounders. I love the little descriptions on the World Stunt Awards nominations.
That's awesome.
Best overall stunt by a stunt woman, Ming Qiu, lost to Zoe Bell and Tracy Keane-Dashnaw for Grindhouse. Best specialty stunt, Ralph Koch, he lost to Robert Jones and Shay Adams in Ghost Rider for the scene where the motorcycle rider takes off to catch a van and has 2 head-on near misses with semi-trucks. And then Best High Work, Dane Farwell was nominated but lost to the Bourne Ultimatum, which you just mentioned, for that fantastic rooftop foot chase. And the Hardest Hit, Adam Hart was nominated for that, lost to Lars Grant in Hot Rod, of all things.
Oh.
So there you go.
How about the budget? How did it do at the box office?
Well, for Len Wiseman's spin with the franchise, he got the biggest budget thus far, $110 million, or $127.6 million in today's dollars, probably because of that PG-13 rating. The movie opened June 27th, 2007, opposite Pixar's fantastic Ratatouille, which took the #1 slot, leaving McClane in second place. The movie still did well for itself, even if it never got into the #1 spot. It ended up earning $134.5 million domestically and $249 million internationally, for a total of $444.9 million in today's dollars. That gave the movie an adjusted profit per finished minute of $2.4 million. 12 years later, and McClane still proves he can make a buck.
Well, we're running long, but I feel like this movie is. I'm really excited to have gone back to this movie, and it certainly has raised my esteem for it after watching it this round. I haven't given enough credit. It is peak McClane. It is peak Bruce Willis as McClane. Some great action, some really fun stunts, and incredible stunt and effects work. I think it's great.
Yeah, it's way up there for me. I've always loved it, and thrilled to have gotten a chance to watch it again.
I think we should head over, Andy. It's time for us to rank it.
Let's do it.
Head over to flickchart.com/thenextreel. You'll see all of our movies, and if you go into the show notes here and tap the Flickchart button, you'll go straight to this one where you can add it to your list, and you should totally do that, and then we can compare notes in class tomorrow.
All right, first up we have Live Free or Die Hard or Star Trek Beyond. Die Hard for me.
Yeah, I think Die Hard.
Live Free or Die Hard or Shaun of the Dead.
Shaun of the Dead.
That's a little tougher for me. Yeah, Shaun of the Dead. Live Free or Die Hard or Beverly Hills Cop. Definitely Die Hard.
Definitely Die Hard.
Live Free or Die Hard or The Wizard of Oz.
Live Free or Die Hard.
Man, it's such a
easy choice. Is what you're going to say.
It's like The Wizard of Oz is like such a classic. It's one of those things that I would put on in the right situations and everything. I really love that film, but Die Hard. Yeah, I mean it is a Die Hard film. I'm going to go with Die Hard. Live Free or Die Hard or Judo. Little Zhang Yimou. I'm going to say Die Hard.
Live Free or Die Hard.
Live Free or Die Hard or Scarlet Street. Die Hard for me.
Die Hard.
Live Free or Die Hard. AKA, we didn't say this, but the poster is saying it, Die Hard 4.0, as it was released in the rest of the world. Another Zhang Yimou, Raise the Red Lantern.
Oh, beautiful fabric. I am also Die Hard.
I'm Die Hard too. Live Free or Die Hard or Seven Samurai.
I always feel bad about this, but I'm Die Hard.
I feel bad too, and I'm going to say Die Hard. I just feel the length of Seven Samurai weighs heavily on me. Landed 85 on our chart. So there you go. It made it pretty high up there.
That's fantastic. How'd it do on your personal list?
My personal list, I really love this film, Pete. It's pretty high up there. It's 119 out of 3908.
Wow.
So it's about 97% on my chart.
Wow. I see. I have not re-ranked it, but this should be telling, because the first time I ranked it, obviously after not having seen the movie in many years, it still landed at 158 out of 1,000 and whatever on my chart. So it's pretty high up there. That's an 84, and I think I would probably rate it higher. Watching it again. So if I go by the algorithm, this should be a 4-star movie. I'm going to give it a 4.5, minus half star for my few little quibbles about editing and camera and sloppiness there that I perceived as sloppiness and probably just didn't understand. And that natural gas thing, let's throw that in there too.
This, this is one of those films where I do have a few little issues. It's nothing that stops me from enjoying it, but I still give it a 4.5. So, and I think a lot of that is like, I feel like on another day I could have given this a 5-star, but I feel like, Die Hard is such a, perfect film for me. I have a hard time putting it at the same place as that film, which may seem silly, but that's in my head how it works. So it's 4.5 with a like.
Yeah, right. This is the thing. If you're gonna if you're gonna shoot for the king, don't miss. Kind of a movie, and there are a few things it missed,
but it's so fun.
We are about to wrap up our Die Hard series. Possibly. Who knows what the future will bring, but at least movies that exist and aren't fantasies. We're wrapping it up next week, right?
We are going to be finishing the franchise. It's crazy to say, but we are actually ending it. We're going to be jumping to the 2013 release of A Good Day to Die Hard. It's as of now, the final in the franchise, directed by John Moore. That's how we're going to be ending the series.
Totally not sure how to take how you said that. That's how we're going to be ending the series.
Well, I can. I shouldn't reveal anything now that I finally have watched
Yeah.
A Good Day to Die Hard.
No,
So
you
it'll
shouldn't,
be,
but you
it'll
already
be
did.
Interesting.
Who knew?
It'll be interesting to discuss next week.
Code for I hated it. 1-star Amazon reviews are too good. Well, this has been a lot of fun. Everybody, thanks so much for downloading and listening to this show. We sure appreciate it. Until next week, you know the drill. When the movie ends,
Our conversation begins.
Amazon giveth, Andy.
As Amazon always doeth.
There are some people who feel very strongly about their hate for this movie.
Oh,
And
yeah.
not just
There
their
are
hate
some
for
of
the
our-
for the hate for the DVD, like the
Right.
Amazon delivery of it. They really hate this movie.
Like they write and write.
Yeah,
Very, very, a lot of exposition.
possibly just in general, the longest trending negative reviews we've seen
Oh my
on this particular movie. This is really interesting. I've got one from Randy who says it's a 1-star worst screenplay ever. Mark Bomback wrote the story and screenplay. Trite and Marvel comic book writing. I do not see how a mature human being can sit through this movie. I only made it through the first 15 minutes. Bomback should have gone to France and hired any third-rate scriptwriter to help him improve the script. Terrible. Now, Andy, there are a few things I'd like to point out here.
Yes.
Why are all the third-rate scriptwriters in France?
I'm guessing it has to do with the fact that the villains were French.
The thugs, but the villains were not French.
Well, the thugs,
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe the thugs, or maybe the person knows of some thug French writers.
Well, I'm going to say that was a 1-star element in a 1-star review. Also, Marvel comic book writing, please. That seems to be hitting below the belt a little bit. And really, he's insulting us.
It's just insulting everybody.
Unless we don't categorize ourselves as mature human beings. Maybe we're just not. Maybe I should look in a mirror. All right. What's yours?
Well, I got a 1-star by Pat the Rat, who says RoboCop meets Austin Powers. This is one of the dumbest movies I have ever seen. I realize it's Die Hard, but while watching it, I kept thinking, die already. Please. What's worse is people like it. I'm ashamed for my species.
Again, why do they have to insult us?
Yeah, they're just really, really aggressively angry people.
And angry at other people who like this, who have a different opinion about this movie. It's a movie.
Yeah.
Thanks, Amazon.
It's hard to believe that we have been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
You're telling me producing this show week after week requires a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our originals page when shopping for books and movies we've covered.
Just visit thenextreel.com/originals. Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great conversations.
I was so excited for our big Star Trek film franchise series this season. All those movies adapted from Gene Roddenberry's original 1960s TV show.
As a huge fan, I know that you geeked out over analyzing the adaptations.
Absolutely. From the motion picture to the Kelvin timeline films, seeing the Enterprise crews on the big screen was a dream come true.
Our list of source material isn't just all books and plays. We have the original series in our list of source material. You can rent the episodes to watch and enjoy, and support the show in the process.
For our Millennium Trilogy series, we covered films adapted from the original books that launched Lisbeth Salander, the girl with the dragon tattoo, the girl who played with fire, and the girl who kicked the hornet's nest.
As much as I love Fincher's version, the original Swedish versions are the way to go. We also did our Die Hard series in Season 7.
I can't believe Die Hard and Die Hard 2 were adaptations. two of the greatest action movies ever.
Well, one of them at least. The other is awfully fun, though. We revisited the classic Mary Poppins for our 1960s movie musical series. A spoonful of sugar always helps the medicine go down.
Old Boy was intense for our Park Chan-wook Vengeance trilogy, and East of Eden and Giant were highlights of our James Dean series.
And a fun time travel mind bender with Predestination to cap things off.
Find all the books behind these adaptations and more at thenextreel.com/originals.
Dive into the source material for your favorite movies. Check it out today, thenextreel.com/originals.